we actually have agreed at international tables around the world, Canada has agreed and signed on to a principle which is polluter pays. That's a very basic principle. And it's not that, government can't contribute. Well, we can contribute by giving dollars to our universities, lowering tuition rates, fees, so that students can get into sciences, can get into engineering, can get into law to push for better standards. But I feel very profoundly, that is not the role of government. All you have to do is take a look at the basic legislation that creates Department of Environment, creates the Department of Natural Resources, creates our entire cabinet. It doesn't say anywhere in there that their job is to give money to multinational corporations. It just, I defy anybody to find it. It says very clearly, your obligation is to protect the public interest. Your obligation is to put standards in place that will provide safe drinking water, clean up hazardous waste, provide safe affordable transportation. It's simple. It's the law of the land. And that's what democracy is all about. We elect people to go to the federal government, similarly to our city councils and our provincial governments, to enforce those laws, which have been passed in our democratic institutions, Parliament and our legislatures. So, to me it's that simplistic. So the first step is, let's not get stuck in, gee, if only we had the right technical solution. Yes, can we advance science? Can we advance technology? Do we need to work on engineering solutions? Absolutely. But we need to look where are the proper triggers for that, and what is the role of the federal government. And I feel very strongly that role is to be putting in place strong standards for protection of health and environment of Canadians. Secondly, once we pass those laws, we need to assert our powers to enforce those laws. What is the point of continuing? Every 5 years, the federal government renews the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. It's in the law. And you know what's happened every 5 years since that law was enacted in the mid-'80s? They have weakened it. And there has been a long progression of giving away more of the powers to the provincial government. Well, why? I mean, a whole number of us banded together almost 2 decades ago, went to the Supreme Court of Canada and asked them a simple question. Does the federal government have the power to protect Canadians' environment? And you know what the Supreme Court said? Absolutely. The federal government has a clear power. The provincial government has some powers, but the federal government does too. And so we need to make sure that we send people to Parliament who carry that message. The federal government exists for a purpose. It has a clear constitutional mandate, and one of those mandates is to protect the health and the environment of Canadians. So their job is to make sure that we enact and continually strengthen those environmental laws, but also that they enforce them. That's a real problem in Alberta. I mean, I feel sorry for any federal official, including a member of Parliament, coming to Alberta. You have to be pretty brave to step across the border into Alberta. Because what's the #1 preoccupation of our provincial government?
Oil economy.
Well, apart from that. Right? Get rid of the feds.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at every table you're at, probably doesn't matter if it's labor standards, environment, health, better public health. That is the #1 mantra of our government. And it just simply has to stop. There is a clear role for the provincial government in Canada and a clear role for the federal government. And there is an increasingly strong role for the municipal government. And what the municipal governments are, they're just bypassing the provincial government. Okay, you won't give us the powers, we're just going to start initiating ideas anyway. We're going to try to come up with strategies to reduce greenhouse gases, better strategies for transportation. Sadly, not enough on urban sprawl, but they're starting to get the idea. So we just simply have to start sending that message to the federal government. We have to bypass the provincial government, and we have to let people know in Ottawa. There are people in Alberta who actually think the federal government has value. We want a federal government in Alberta. We want them to stand up and say, no more tar sands development until you make sure that we're not destroying our fisheries, we're not destroying our northern waters, we're not destroying the opportunities and the health of our Aboriginal communities. We're not destroying the Northwest Territories' right to have a clean, healthy environment. So very clearly, that's my agenda. That's why I'm running for Parliament. I've tried for 30 years to fight the government, and I've had it. I want to become the government. I want to be there with Nathan. I want to be at the table and help him to stand up for, you know, the most important things, the things that we believe in. I wanted to give you, before I stop talking, 2 concrete examples to show why I am right, that law and order is the way to go. And I've had the opportunity to participate in both of those processes, more in the first. The first one is the campaign to reduce mercury emissions and the growing levels of mercury in Alberta lakes. The other one is the campaign to battle climate change. Well, what did we have until about a year ago? We had an expanding coal-fired power industry in Alberta. We had a government that was not willing to put, you know, standards in place to, you know, have cleaner environment. We had absolutely no action by the coal-fired industry to actually reduce mercury emissions. Not in Saskatchewan, not in New Brunswick, not in Nova Scotia, not in Ontario, not in Alberta. Well, a number of us led a campaign at a provincial table to fight for mercury regulations in Alberta. And we won that campaign. And guess what? This is the only place in Canada where industry, by end of 2009, must put in place technologies to capture mercury. Wow. And it would not have happened had we not fought for and got that law. And I say kudos to the Alberta government. They did it, and no other jurisdiction has. And you know what? The federal government has exactly the same power. And it's called the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. And you know what? More than 25 years ago, the federal government decided the #1 pollutant of concern for Canadians was mercury, a significant neurotoxin. And what have they done to reduce the mercury from coal-fired? Absolutely nothing. So that's a reason to get stronger people from Alberta to Ottawa. It's create a level playing field. So we've shown it can be done in Alberta. The rest of Canada deserves to be protected. And you know what? It's going to send a message to the rest of the world. Because most of the mercury that's polluting our high Arctic, and that's where most of the global mercury goes, is coming from Asia. But unless we pass strong laws in Canada, how can we go to them and say, gee, you should be controlling your mercury? Unless we're willing to spend the dollars to go over and help them clean up that technology, they're simply not going to. Well, look at greenhouse gases. So in mercury, we now have a regulation. Very soon, we hope, we will have a federal regulation to finally control greenhouse gases, thanks to Nathan. But it's the same story, isn't it? I mean, what have we had for the past how many decades? The Voluntary Challenge Program. And what happened under that? Almost every industry in Alberta signed up and said, yes, yes, we're all for the Voluntary Challenge Program. A mere handful came forward with action plans, and virtually no one has taken any action. Now, even Stephen Harper is saying, it's time for the voluntary to end. But where's his strong law? Right? He's proposing emission intensity. And the provincial minister of environment, I think it was this week, was quoted in the newspaper saying, we're going to have what, 65% above the Kyoto level by 2020 or 2030. So it's the only way that we're going to get any action. And industry themselves are begging. I mean, to their credit, industries like TransAlta and so forth want to take measures. And they want to find affordable ways to do that. And the only way that we're going to do that is provide the level playing field, set those binding targets. And Nathan has done the first step. The ball is now over to Harper's court. He has to bring that law forward, and we will see what happens. And if his party doesn't vote for it, well, then we've got the opportunity to send better people to Parliament.